Hey everybody, it's May 16th, 2019, and welcome to the Tower of Power episode number, I don't know, we'll insert it here. I honestly don't remember where we left off. Probably pretty high in the 70s or something, right? Anyways, we're going to wake up the Tower of Power. It's been asleep for a while. I'm going to open it up and inspect it. Hopefully no mices have gotten in there and done any damage. And then we'll see if we can't get it started. Good news, no sign of any mice, just cobwebs. All this work I did on rewiring this thing is still intact. So everything still looks okay. This wire doesn't go anywhere by design, that's right, I remember now. Well, so much for getting this running today. The common problem with these, rubber gets old and cracks, and so it's going to leak like a son of a gun if I try and it's also not going to want to prime because it's going to suck air back in through that, so I need a new one of these primer bulbs. This hose is actually pretty old too. This section still seems okay. Anywho, I hate when that happens. Alright, so we're getting ready to try and start the Tower of Power for the first time in over a year. So I got the muffs on there to supply water. I got a shut-off valve so I don't have to run back to the house and every time I want to shut the spigot off. It's important to have water going through. You don't want to run the motor out of the water or without muffs on for any amount of time because you run the risk of damaging the rubber impeller. And if you damage your impeller, you won't have proper water flow to cool the engine. So I'm just going to turn the water on briefly and see if it cranks okay. Not going to worry about ignition right now. I did get a new fuel primer bulb, but I've got to get something to squirt some fuel into the cylinders. It'll never start just on the choke. The choke system on this is not very good. Alright, go ahead and turn the water on.
It's always been doing that.
Yeah, I know.
You don't have it hooked up. The wire that's
Oh yeah, that's right. That wire fell off. Okay, so now that I know that it's going to crank, I think I'll get something to fix this wire that fell off. Go ahead and shut the water off. And I'm going to have to open this up to get to the carbs.
Remember, those are...
Put that on the top of that. Thanks.
Remember, those are hard to take off.
I've already had them off.
Oh, that's not good.
No, it's not good. That just broke. Wow. Well, that's unfortunate.
And we only have 2 clips to put on.
Yeah, I know. Plastic. And I bet you can't get this little piece by itself. You probably have to buy the whole latch.
Then you have to take out that big piece of metal off.
And that's riveted in there. Are you kidding me? So I just had this off like a week ago without any issues. And just now when I went to flip these locking tabs open, this one broke and fell apart. You can see that this piece right here, everything else on this is metal, but this piece right here is plastic. So the plastic gets old and brittle. That's easy enough to replace by itself. I wonder if they make a repair kit. I'll tell you what, if they don't, I'll make my own. I mean, why couldn't I make a little piece of metal, drill a hole through it, thread it?
You put a bolt there too.
Well, the problem is, how do you put a bolt? You can't make a through hole. You could make something the same way that this was made, but then the question is, how do you get, you know what, you're going to spread these tabs apart, probably bend the metal apart, get them in there, and then bend them back. Because this latch is held on by rivets. So you could grind the rivets off to take this off, I guess. And then this part is held to the, how's that held onto the case?
There's a...
there's a long pin that goes all the way through this, I bet you.
Yeah.
And it has to be, that pin has to be removed to get these out. But you know, the whole point of it is it's just another little pain in the you-know-what. All right, so the way that the choke system works on these motors, for those of you who aren't aware, is it uses these plastic shutters that swing down in front of 2 of the 3 carburetors to cause them to hopefully run rich enough. But it never really worked that well. As a matter of fact, there's actually a modification that several people have done where the 12 volt that goes to the solenoid, which pulls that choke up, which can also be manually pulled up right here. What they've done is they've actually used that 12 volt line instead to use a little like a little miniature injector to squirt raw fuel right into the throat of the carburetor. So that might be something down the road. If I keep this motor, might be something worth considering doing. In the meantime, I found the easiest way to do a cold start is to get fuel directly in there. So the bottom carburetor, the throat's wide open. It doesn't have this shutter mechanism or anything on it, so it's the easiest one to get into. But I found that if I just try and squirt it with a bulb syringe like this, a lot of the fuel will flow back out and get wasted. So put a little hose on here. It's hard to find anything that would fit halfway decent on the end of this thing, so I used some heat shrink tubing. My only concern is this might dissolve in gasoline, but for the small amount of time I'm going to use it to get this started today, I think we'll be okay. And then I have a clean jar with good 2-stroke gasoline in it. We're going to just siphon up a little bit of this, snake this all the way in there, squirt some directly into that chamber. So the 2 bottom cylinders are fueled by this carb. So we'll get hopefully those to fire off, and maybe enough to actually start pulling in some fuel into the other one. Well, it's got bowls in there. If they're doing the float bowls in there, if they're doing their job correctly, it won't flood. Okay. So now I'm gonna open the throttle up so I can get this in. Turn the water on. Thank you, Mark. Ready?
Are you ready?
Trying. That's it. Shut the water off. All right, this is getting firm, so the fuel system should be fully pressurized. I think we're gonna need to give it another shot. All right, water on.
What are you doing?
I think there's stale gas in the carburetors. All right, so I thought that gas was good gas, but it turns out it's not. So that gas has a bad stale smell to it. What clued me in was the fact that the gas that was spitting out of the other carburetor throat, when I smelt it, didn't smell right. I took some of it and I put it in a glass jar and looked at it, and it looks like it's got some water contamination in it too. So rather than deal with this whole mess right now, what I've done is I've disconnected this line that comes from the fuel tank. I've run a temporary fuel line. I got a temporary tank here. We're going to just gravity feed into these fuel pumps. Fresh, clean, 2-stroke gas premix. It's going to take a little while for it to work through the system here, and you know, hopefully there's not too much crap in those carburetors. We'll find out.
There we go.
That's that gas I squirted right into the cylinders. Pulling the plug.
Why?
Huh?
Why?
Well, because they're flooded with lousy gas. Now that I've got some fresh gas actually getting into the system by the sounds of it, I figure I give us a better chance of getting this thing started by pulling some of the plugs. I can't pull number 6 because it's way down there. It's a pain in the butt to get to. But I can pull a few of these other ones. Alright, I pulled 5 out of the 6 plugs. I'm going to shut the ignition off and just crank it. See if we can't blow out any stuff in the cylinders. And dry out the spark plugs. Hey everybody, let me tell you my tales of woe. So yesterday, I didn't bother hauling out the video and tripod and everything, taking any video. But yesterday, I put the plugs back in and decided to try and start the motor again. And I was actually able to get it to start. And I was initially very pleased, but it was running really rough. And I had my feed water on kind of low. Since it started running, I decided to increase the rate of the feed water, going to the muffs on the lower unit. And it started to stumble. And I couldn't get it to run right. And then when it finally did die and I tried starting it again, what I found was that if I cover up the throat on the bottom carburetor to kind of choke it really hard and get it to pull, when I would take my hand off, it would gush out like, you know, I don't know how many cc's of heavily water contaminated gas. And the thing is, I mean, I must have spent a month of Sundays working at just trying to get that gas to go through the system. And I'm like, why can't I get this gas and water mix out? I mean, I'm feeding it fresh gas from an auxiliary tank up here now. And then it dawned on me, how about this? How about water infiltration into the combustion chamber? That's what I think might be going on here. To make things worse, I noticed and when I had it running, no water was coming from the telltale, the little pee hole here, right? So I looked at this under closer inspection, and I could see that the end of this was completely blocked up with what almost looked like concrete or clay. And I think I recall that previously I had this problem where some sort of insect, like a mud dauber, wasp, or something, had clogged this. So where I left off yesterday was I was in the process of trying to find something to put in there to kind of clear that out. So I'm going to finish trying to clear that out, and then I'm going to see if I can get it restarted, and I'm going to see if I can get water pumping out the telltale. If not, then unfortunately I'm going to have to, I'm probably going to have to drop the lower unit off again. And if I do have water infiltration into the combustion chamber, if that ends up being the case, maybe it's just a gasket. I don't know. I'm going to have to go back and do some research from back days of yore. What was that, 2 years ago, when I was knee deep into this thing, or elbow deep, or I don't know, however deep you want to say I was. Alright, so let me work on this telltale clog. So this tool here is called a pin vise, and I've got a small drill bit in here. So let's, what I'm going to do, I'm going to keep my hand underneath here and just collect any foreign matter that decides to fall out, because I'm going to be curious. I can only seem to go so far. I'm wondering if there's a, I just hit my head. I'm wondering if there's a turn right there that's keeping me from being able to go any further. Or is there actually something blocking that solid? I don't know. My theory is that there's actually a turn right there. Honestly can't remember, and of course you can't see it. It would be too easy. There's a hose in the way here from this angle. I find it hard to believe that that is something that is that solid. I think I need to make a turn, so I need something that's going to give some flex, rotation to that. Let's try a piece of wire. There we go. Alright, that's far enough in that would be into the block. Alright, let's see if we can start it again. Aww. Just broke spark plug. Yeah, the battery was dying anyways.